The morning sun glimmered off the glass towers of downtown New York as Lila Thompson stepped off the bus, clutching a small leather folder to her chest. Her shoes were old but neatly polished, her dress simple but clean. Around her, the streets buzzed with people in expensive suits, holding coffee cups and smartphones, hurrying toward the same corporate buildings she had only seen in magazines. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "You face storms, droughts, and broken tractors. Leela, you can face this too." She was on her way to the final interview at Wellington Enterprises, one of the biggest tech corporations in the country. Hundreds had applied, and only 5 were shortlisted. Lila, born and raised on a small family farm, was the last person anyone expected to make it this far. As she entered the reception area, she could feel the judgmental eyes on her. Other candidates sat in tailored suits, wearing luxury watches and designer shoes. A young man smirked, whispering to another, "Is she lost? This isn't a farmer's market." Lila smiled politely, pretending not to hear. She found a quiet seat, straightened her folder, and focused on her notes. While waiting, she glanced at her reflection in the glass wall. Her brown hair was tied neatly, her eyes calm but determined. She remembered her father's words. "We may not have much, Lila, but we have our pride, our honesty, and our brains. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." After what felt like hours, the secretary called her name. Her heart raced, but her steps remained steady. She entered the elegant office of Richard Wellington, the CEO himself. The man was known for his arrogance. His interviews were legendary for breaking even the smartest candidates. Richard looked up, his sharp eyes scanning her from head to toe. "Miss Thompson," he said with a smirk, "a farmer's daughter applying for a position in corporate strategy. That's unusual." Lila met his gaze without fear. "Maybe, sir," she said softly, "but sometimes the best strategies come from the ground up." Richard raised an eyebrow, slightly amused. "We'll see about that." And with that, the most unexpected interview of her life began. Richard Wellington leaned back in his luxurious leather chair, eyeing Lila with mild amusement. The sleek office around him reflected power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, marble floors, and awards lined neatly behind his desk. To him, Lila looked like someone out of place, a country girl stepping into a world she couldn't possibly understand. "So, Miss Thompson," he began, his tone dripping with arrogance, "why do you think you belong here, in a world of innovation and global business? This isn't a farm where you plant seeds and wait for things to grow." Lila smiled politely. "With all due respect, sir, innovation isn't so different from farming. You study the ground, make a plan, and adapt when nature changes. It's about patience, timing, and smart work." Her calm reply caught Richard off guard for a moment, but he quickly masked his surprise. "Interesting comparison," he muttered, then leaned forward. "All right, let's test that wisdom of yours. Suppose our company's profits have been flat for 2 years. No extra budget, no new investors. How would you increase profit by 20%? Without hesitation, Lila replied, "I'd start by looking for waste. Wasted time, resources, or talent. On our farm, we couldn't afford waste. Every drop of water, every seed mattered. When you stop wasting, you start growing." Richard tilted his head, intrigued despite himself. "And how would that apply to a tech corporation?" "By listening to the people who actually do the work," Lila said confidently. "Just like we listen to the land, your company should listen to its employees. Efficiency starts from the roots, not the top." The room went quiet for a moment. Richard glanced at her resume again. It didn't boast fancy degrees or elite internships, yet her words carried experience that no classroom could teach. Trying to regain his dominant tone, he smirked. "You sound confident, Miss Thompson, but confidence without results is just talk." Lila looked him straight in the eye. "Then give me a challenge, sir," she said calmly. "Let me show you results." Richard paused, studying her expression. For the first time that morning, he wasn't amused. He was intrigued. The farmer's daughter had planted her first seed right in the heart of his pride. Richard leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. The arrogance in his tone had softened slightly, replaced by curiosity. "All right, Miss Thompson," he said. "Let's make this more interesting. If our investors suddenly pulled out and the company was on the verge of collapse, how would you save it?" Lila paused for a brief moment, choosing her words carefully. "First, I'd stop the panic," she said calmly. "When a storm hits our farm, we don't run around screaming that the crops are doomed. We assess, adapt, and act." Richard arched an eyebrow. "And what does a storm on a farm have to do with corporate finance?" Lila smiled faintly. "Everything, sir. When investors leave, it's like losing a season's rainfall. You can't change it, but you can still make something grow. I'd focus on what we do have, our people, our innovation, our customers. Real value isn't built by investors. It's built by vision." Her voice was steady, confident. "When drought hit our fields, my father and I didn't quit. We learned to reuse water, switch crops, and work smarter. We built something stronger from nothing. Companies can do the same. It's about creativity, not money." The room went completely silent. Even the assistants sitting nearby glanced up from their screens, stunned by her analogy. Richard stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You're saying I rely too much on investors?" he asked, a hint of defensiveness in his voice. "I'm saying," Lila replied gently, "that great leaders rely on ideas, not wallets. Money is only a tool. Vision is the seed that grows a future." For the first time, Richard had no comeback. His smirk had vanished. Instead, there was a flicker of something unexpected: respect. One of the senior board members, who had been quietly observing the interview from the corner, whispered to another, "This girl's got more sense than half our executives." Lila sat tall, her calm presence filling the room. She hadn't used big words or fancy jargon, yet every sentence carried the weight of truth earned through hard work and experience. Richard finally leaned back and exhaled. "You're not what I expected, Miss Thompson," he admitted. She smiled softly. "That's because you didn't expect to be challenged by a farmer's daughter." The office was silent for a few long seconds after Lila's last words. The city skyline behind Richard glowed golden under the morning sun. Yet the only thing he could see was the young woman sitting across from him, calm, composed and quietly powerful. He cleared his throat. "You speak with a lot of conviction, Miss Thompson," he said slowly. "Who taught you to think like this?" Lila smiled softly and opened the small folder she had carried so carefully. Inside was an old letter, yellowed around the edges. She placed it gently on the desk. "My father did, sir. He taught me everything I know about resilience, innovation, and leadership." Richard picked up the letter and froze when he saw the name signed at the bottom. Daniel Thompson. His expression changed instantly. He looked back at Lila in disbelief. "Daniel Thompson," he repeated quietly. "Your father was one of my best engineers." "Years ago?" "Yes," Lila nodded. "He loved this company. He used to say he believed in its vision, but when the recession hit, you let him go. We lost everything. The house, the savings, everything except the farm. He never blamed you, though. He told me, 'Don't grow bitterness, Lila, grow strength.'" Richard sat back speechless. Memories flashed before his eyes. The layoffs, the desperate cost-cutting decisions, the faces he had forgotten. And now one of those faces had returned, not for revenge, but to teach him a lesson in humility. Lila continued gently. "He passed away last year, but before he did, he made me promise I'd come here one day, not to confront you, but to earn my place on my own merit. That's why I'm here." The proud CEO's voice wavered for the first time. "Your father was a good man. I made a mistake letting him go." Lila nodded, her voice calm but firm. "We all make mistakes, sir. What matters is what we learn from them." Richard slowly stood up and extended his hand. "Miss Thompson, welcome to Wellington Enterprises." As their hands met, Lila smiled. The farmer's daughter had done the impossible. She had outsmarted the arrogant CEO, and in doing so, reminded everyone that true intelligence doesn't come from privilege. It grows from perseverance.